Welcome to Pause for Peace with me, Pastor Jule, and happy Eastertide. The season of Easter continues for 50 days all the way to Pentecost Sunday, which is, I think, the second Sunday in June. So I'm going to keep on sharing a little bit more about the season of Easter and to break down a few more things that often are focused upon or overlooked on actual Easter Sunday. But if you think about it, so Jesus is executed by the Roman Empire. He is in that tomb waiting for whatever mysterious way God is going to transform that death into new life. In my Easter Sunday sermon, I was quoting some and talking a little bit about the tomb just being like this resting point on the way to transformation, kind of like a composting bin, like twisting and turning until new life comes forth. And he had all these followers that had been with him, and many who had come from Galilee and followed him to Jerusalem for the Passover. So Jerusalem was not their home base, but here they were experiencing what had taken place for them during their Pentecost celebration, and most probably in a borrowed room of either another secret Jerusalem disciple. There are some traditions that actually say that upper room had been either originally like a property of Joseph of Arimathea, or possibly that Joseph of Arimathea actually bought that building and allowed the followers of Jesus to have that place to continue. That room where they had had that amazing Passover celebration with him, that night in which he was betrayed and arrested. But when they were in that upper room having that meal together, which we remembered on Maundy, Thursday, he gave them that new command to love one another. He was washing their feet and he was telling them all, love one another. Like, that is the mark. People will know if you are a genuine follower of me, if you actually love one another, if you actually love the world, if you actually serve the world, like empty yourself and serve the world for the good of all. That is how Jesus told us we would know if somebody was actually a genuine follower of Jesus, a Christian, a follower of the way of Christ. And that took place on Maundy, Thursday in that upper room, possibly what was made into the headquarters by Joseph of Arimathea, either having owned that building or purchasing that building. And Jesus' friends hung out there. There was nowhere else for them to go in Jerusalem. And depending on how you actually understand the story, there are those that say the men had to hide out because it was known that they had been followers of Jesus. And that's one of the reasons some say that we don't see the men in these stories in the canonical gospels of the women being there witnessing the crucifixion, the women being there a part of the burial, and the women being there on Easter morning. But the men, these disciples, these apostles Jesus had chosen that were actually named in the canonical gospels, they're not recorded as being at any step. There are some who claim that the beloved disciple John was, according to their reading of the fourth gospel, the Gospel of John. But if you read closely enough, you will see that it's most probably referring to Mary Magdalene as that beloved disciple that is there with Mary the mother. Not going to get all into that today. You can go check it out for yourself. But if his followers from Galilee and those who had been really commissioned to be about his work, the men that had been, were truly known by the authorities, then their lives would have been in jeopardy, because Pilate actually was willing, the Roman governor was actually willing to crucify anyone that was about this whole revolution of love Jesus was about, this whole kingdom that is the kingdom of reigning love within. That's what he was trying to teach, that is the kind of king he was. And anybody who was about that was seen as a threat to the empire. And so possibly his male disciples were actually hiding out in this upper room And the stories go that the women were moving around a little more freely, women who had been with them and named in the canonical Gospels all along the way. While we have differing names given to the women, just as some of the male disciples have differing names depending on which canonical Gospel you're reading, there's one name that stands out among all the others, and that is named first anywhere the women that followed Jesus were named. And that is Mary the Magdalene. No surprise that I'm bringing that up once again on this second Sunday of Easter. But there is this special connection, this either leadership that Mary the Magdalene had among all the women, and perhaps there are extra canonical Gospels that have been unearthed that are showing, like in the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, the Pistis Sophia, like there are these other Gospels showing that the reason that Mary the Magdalene is there is because like she got it, she understood. And the Gospel of Philip, I believe it is, even talks about Mary the Magdalene being like this special spiritual companion, this koinonia, and depending on how you understand that word in that gospel there, it's recording that he was seen often kissing her on the lips. It's like they were sharing the life breath between each other, and that there's the possibility, according to the extra canonical Gospels, that Mary actually was like this spiritual companion of his. Some even believe that Mary Magdalene was actually his wife, and that she like understood it, and he entrusted this message to her because they were that bound together in this sacred union of the holy masculine and holy feminine coming together to like live in this world and show how we all are to be each and every day, and how our relationships between one another also are to be. So wherever you fall on that understanding, the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and the fourth Gospel, often called the Gospel of John, name Mary the Magdalene first. Everywhere, I said this last week, everywhere but one place in the Gospel of John, when Mary the Magdalene is with Mary the Mother at the cross, and it is in that one instance in the canonical Gospels that Mary the Mother is named first among the women. Every other place, it's Mary the Magdalene. So if you're doing a close reading of the text and you're understanding like the culture in which this whole execution was taking place and the threats that those who were moving with Jesus all throughout his time in Jerusalem and in the temple and being seen and actually sent to teach in his way, if the male disciples were really under that much threat, you would understand how it is that Mary the Magdalene would be the one named in the canonical Gospels as going Easter morning to the tomb. And there is, she's either alone in the canonical Gospels, I will say, by herself, she goes to the tomb, or she is going with the other women. And when she's going with the other women, the canonical Gospels are like telling the story that they're taking the spices and the ointments, and they're going to continue this ritual, this way that the dead would be prepared for burial, which is a way of like washing the body and honoring the body. And even the women that would do this often when one of their loved ones would die, they might even have that ability to like see and sense that soul or that spirit of the person is still present. And so it's this incredibly holy act. And there's some evidence in the canonical Gospels that this had taken place, even though hastily perhaps, as Jesus was being buried. The Gospel of Luke says that Joseph of Arimathea lays him in the tomb after wrapping him in the linen cloth, and Mary the Magdalene is watching there. The other women are watching there, and they go and prepare their spices. They wait for the passing of Sabbath, and then they come back. But interestingly, this only came to me this year in all of my studyings of the stories of Easter. In the fourth Gospel, the Gospel often called the Gospel of John, Mary the Magdalene goes by herself to the tomb very early on Easter morning. And if you take a really close look there, she's not bringing any spices with her. She is going to the tomb either because she is waiting for him to resurrect because like she understood that that's what was going to happen, or she is going to the tomb just like any one of us would go to the places that our loved ones may have been buried. When my mom passed, she had a very elaborate list of where we were supposed to spread or like return her ashes to the earth. And she had a list, including like one of the details she said is like at sunrise at the beach. She wanted us to be out there as the sun broke and to actually spread some of her ashes. And my sister was doing that. I was just like clicking a picture of it, and the picture reveals like this glorious sun rising over Lake Michigan where we live, and it's like angels' wings. That's how the photo looks. Like angels' wings are coming forth. This bright light is coming forth as my sister is releasing some of my mother's ashes there on the beach. It's like so amazing. I did not see that when I was taking the photo, but it's so evident when you look at the actual picture. And so many of us have a place. You know, some people, we feel like our loved one's body needs to be buried in the earth because we want to have like a marker, a place where we can go so that we can continue to feel in communion with them and continue to have dialogue and conversation with them or to honor their body. And in that fourth gospel, the Gospel of John, Mary's not bringing any ointment or spices. She is not going there to do anything about the body, any of those rituals of burying the dead. That's not what she's going there, according to the fourth gospel. She's going there out of great love for her teacher, for the one she actually names my Lord, according to the Greek. The way she like uses this word, or Rabboni, like my teacher, my Lord. And there are those who have studied those words very closely and see that there are ways of understanding that translation in Aramaic and in Greek that could actually point to the same word a wife would use for her husband. However you want to make sense of that, what we know is there is deep love that Mary, according to the fourth gospel, has and is bringing forth with her as she goes to the tomb. In fact, the story unfolds according to the fourth gospel that she is like overcome with grief, that she is like crying her tears out. And we may not remember that this whole experience of being in Jerusalem was an experience that was incredibly traumatizing. Mary had watched her teacher, her master, her loved one brutally be murdered. There's trauma that happens in any body that actually witnesses that. And there's trauma that is carried in any body that actually commits such violence against other people. And so whether it is out of grief or just that sense of releasing the trauma of what has taken place in that nearby garden, in the place of the crucifixion, probably a stone's throw away from where this tomb actually is that Joseph secures and has the body laid. There's this immense amount of like sadness, energy, just like, I would think it's probably like heavy, thick, dense energy from such violence taking place. And so she's like carrying that all in her body. And I've heard one reading of like it's a novel kind of speaking about this moment when Jesus speaks her name, when this gardener, the story in the canonical gospel says, it like comes to her and she looks and she believes it's the gardener, the Gospel of John records, until the gardener, Jesus, the risen Christ, says her name, and then she knows it is her master, her teacher. And there's this beautiful way, as I was mentioning in that novel that I've read, that it's actually like the sunlight is coming up, and so he's like standing in such a way, according to that story, that she can't recognize his face because of the sun, like blocking out the details of his face as the sun is rising. And it is in hearing her name, Mary, that she recognized this risen Christ. And the amazing thing is, like, it doesn't really disturb her that Christ is risen. That's not something that was like out of her understanding of what could be, because there's a way that she just receives that amazing gift. There's a scene, this scene has been named, in the words I'm about to tell you, has actually been named and painted throughout the ages. And it is called the Noli Me Tangere, which is the do not cling to me. And so many paintings have actually like mistranslated the word a little bit and thought that Jesus was actually saying, like, don't touch me, like, you know, maybe because she's a woman or she's dirty or she's of the earth or whatever it is. That's not actually what the actual Greek is meaning. Noli Me Tangere actually means do not cling to me. And clinging, craving, like, that is something that is so common to so many of us. In fact, I think about, it's going to sound a little wild, but I think about like a baby monkey. If you've ever seen those like spider monkeys, and the mama is like, come on, little baby monkey. Like, the baby monkey has to cling to its mother as the mother like goes all over the trees and all over the jungle and everywhere. The baby monkey has to like cling for dear life to the mama. And so it's almost like this natural instinct to cling. Maybe it's not entirely natural, but it is like an instinctual thing that we cling to something. We cling to that which we love, that which we desire. We cling to it. And Jesus is saying, Noli Me Tangere, like, do not cling to me. In another historical novel that I've been listening to in these last months, it talks about bringing that memory again and again and again as the early church unfolds, because there are ways in which the early church unfolds beyond really what Jesus had been teaching and telling them. And Mary the Magdalene in this historical fiction novel, like, she has that coming back to her again and again and again, like, do not cling to me, Mary. It's like, allow it to unfold the way it is unfolding. There were communities outside of Jerusalem, those that had been taught by Jesus along the way, that became like little churches. And that actually may have been taking place before Jesus was crucified and buried and risen, made alive again. And so when those disciples would go, those early apostles, those early followers of Jesus would go out, sometimes they were encountering people that were already trying to make sense of his teachings. And those teachings might have come to form a little bit differently than the original disciples had heard Jesus teaching all along the way. And so in this novel, Mary is reminding herself, like, don't even cling to Jesus as you yourself understood him, because each one of us has a different kind of encounter with the risen Christ. Each one of us, when we read scripture or hear the stories of Jesus, there's something different that resonates for every one of us, especially depending on where we're at in our lives. Like, if we're feeling like really angry about a way that we have been harmed, and like maybe even a way we've harmed another in our relationship, and we are stuck in guilt and really needing this like gift of forgiveness to come in and help us both be released and both experience graciousness, like this way of mercifully letting one another go from that angry bond that can happen when we are harming one another in our relationships. Like, it's very possible that those stories about forgiveness, like the parable Jesus tells about the two brothers, the younger brother who wants it all from his dad and then goes and wastes it all, comes back home finally falling at his father's feet and wanting to confess and ask for forgiveness, and the father just scooping him up and gloriously bringing him back into the household and like embodying what true grace and forgiveness is. Like if we are struggling with forgiveness or being harmed in our relationships, that story, that parable from Jesus is going to resonate with us in ways that for some who aren't experiencing that is not going to be as important as maybe the story of continually having hope and bringing persistently your cries for justice to the world, because there's a story where Jesus talks about a widow who again and again and again is seeking justice, wanting her prayers to be heard. And again and again and again, she goes to the judge and she will not drop it. And so if we're people who are pushing for justice, for reform in this world, that story might actually be the teaching of Jesus we hold on to. We all have these unique encounters and experiences in our lives that bring a different bit of Jesus' story to importance for us and to being critical to our faith. Well, in that garden, that Noli Me Tangere, as I was saying, it has been painted in so many different ways, sculpted, drawn, so many mediums in which you can find it. I've actually seen beautiful wood carvings on a pulpit in the Basilica La Santa of Santa Maria in St. Maximum La Santa Bome, this beautiful Basilica of Mary Magdalene. And there's just this amazing pulpit of the native wood there and olive wood, I believe it is. And there are actual scenes from Jesus and Mary Magdalene's life together. And the last scene is the Noli Me Tangere all around this massive pulpit that was actually installed in, I believe it was 1576 is when that pulpit was installed. Or maybe it was 1756. Anyway, long time ago. Noli Me Tangere, I want us to keep that before us in this season of Eastertide, because wherever you fall in this whole thing with Mary Magdalene and Jesus, here's the bottom line. One of the key teachings of the risen Christ is that we are not to cling to Jesus in that way that we must control and put it all in a box and neatly package it up and say, here it is, and nothing else can be. Not to cling to anything that we so desire, any outcome we so want to have happen. This is the canonical path. The kinetic path. This is the path of letting go. It's actually the canonical path as well, because this is the stories that Jesus is teaching us all throughout the canonical scriptures, this kenosis that is supposed to be taking place, this continual self-emptying. Because the reality is we're like so little bitty in this whole great big cosmos. There's no way our own little wills know exactly what is the best, what is right, what is like in the grand scheme of it all, what is needed for us or anybody else. And to go through life holding fast to this is how it has to be is a path that's going to lead to a lot of sadness. If we can go through life in that Noli Me Tangere way, that not clinging to anything, except, I would say, to the actual love that is God. If we can find a way every day to empty our own wills so that what God wills is what will come to be, if we can align ourselves so deeply with this sense of love that just won't let us go, then we can move ourselves forward a little bit more on this path of being faithful to the way of Jesus, to the way of love. So let's pause. It's a lot that I've shared today. I could get going about Mary Magdalene forever. And if you are watching this as a video cast, I have a few images behind me. One is of an icon from the early church of this statuesque woman in red who is like teaching, not really shaking her finger, but she's clearly in a role of teaching the male disciples. So it's like she's come back to tell them he is risen. The tomb didn't keep him. Like life is the whole end of this whole thing. And there's also an icon behind me of the Noli Me Tangere, and like Eastern kind of tradition way of showing this, where Mary is like kind of like in the garden and trying to like reach out to Jesus, and the risen Christ is, is giving that message like, don't cling to me. You can't cling to anything. And there's another image behind me, if you're watching the video cast, one of my favorite images of the Noli Me Tangere that actually, I think the artist, it's actually a mosaic, and I think the artist had to be very familiar with the Gospel of Mary, because in that representation behind me of the Noli Me Tangere, we have this like reunion in the garden, and the woman who is like pointing to her heart, and if you look super closely, she has like these little, I don't know, they almost look like little goblins, and there's like 7 of them, and they're like just kind of draped over her arm, maybe like you would carry a purse, just like draped over, and they have these little sticky fingers, but these little goblin-like fingers, and all of them are free. Like this is, I think, to show a Noli Me Tangere, which shows a mastery of the powers, the climates of being human, one of them being craving or clinging, that are named in the Gospel of Mary. And this is a representation of showing, like, through the way of the heart, through this way of communing with the Spirit of God that is within and that is beyond, there is a way that we can come into balance, knowing who we are and allowing those powers or climates of being a human being to be freed from them, allowing us to just kind of like let them hang over they're not going anywhere. We're not going to get rid of these aspects of ourselves, but can we be in a place where we are free, when we are liberated from being like stuck in or by them, and our soul being so deeply connected to this way of love that we are seeing in this risen one in the garden, in the risen Christ. If we can be so deeply connected and like steeped in that spirit energy of God, then all of these clinging things of the ego that we so want to have happen each day, including like one of the 7 climates or powers of being a human being, we all have this, is anger. It's like wrath. Not the anger that's a signal to remind us like what we value, but like wrath that takes us over. This is one of the powers we have to dance with. So that representation of Noli Me Tangere is actually kind of showing us like, can we live in such a way that our soul is liberated now that we are free? It's a spiritual path we have to seek to master day after day after day. So let's get quiet for a little bit as we pause for peace. This second Sunday, second week of Eastertide. I'm going to invite you with your feet flat on the earth, bringing your awareness to your heart space as that representation of the Noli Me Tangere that I just talked about last, as that representation is showing that it's the way of the spiritual eye of the heart in the center of our chest that we invite to open so that we can enter into this communion, this union, this integration with the Spirit of God that is living, that was living in the risen Christ, and that lives in all of us as well. We take a few deep breaths to keep us focused in the heart space. We set the intention. Our prayer is for our heart space to be open, the spiritual eye of our heart to be that bridge between this present moment and between that deep connection, that deep union with what some would call the immanent presence, the immanence, or the here and now, the dwelling within part of God. We're not denying that God is transcendent, but we are claiming also that God is immanent, as we see in Jesus. That part of what Jesus was teaching us is that we too can become the anthropos, the ones that are fully aware of the Spirit of God living within us. It's almost like we get our little device of who we are plugged back in, like we have to recharge the batteries on our cell phone, like we just have to get our soul plugged back in, our psyche, our ego, our body, all of it has to get plugged back into the fact that the Spirit of God lives in us too. And as we are in that deep connection with the Spirit of God, this deep well of love that is God, our question to pose to Spirit today, to that deep well, that beautiful pool of abiding love, is, what do I need in order not to cling? What do I need? You might need to fill in the blank a little bit with what that means in your own life, but what do I need in order not to cling? Might be clinging to a certain notion of how the world is supposed to be. Or maybe it's clinging to a particular relationship. Maybe it's clinging to a particular way you believe your life is supposed to unfold. Whatever it might be, whatever particular outcome you're holding fast to right now, bring that to God right now. Hearing those words, Noli Me Tangere, there's no need to cling. We can fall into the grace, the mercy of the risen Christ when we open our hands and receptively ready ourselves to receive from God. So much more than we could ever dream or imagine for ourselves. In this silence, and if you're pulled off, just come back with your breath, with that intention that you're connecting deep into that pool. It's like you're returning to the love that is at the core of who you really are. The love that is God. You're listening, looking, being open to notice, receive, perceive what it is you need so that you will not cling. Let's take one more deep breath. Notice, receive whatever last bit you need to receive or notice right now. inwardly express some form of gratitude for what has come. And when you're ready to bring your awareness back from this deep place, to return to the present here and now, I'm going to invite you to come on back, get yourself regrounded in your body. You might need to tap your heels into the earth. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And I hope you are having a felt sense or making some kind of mental note, like, what did I receive, so that I can remember. Because those things that we're craving, those things that we're clinging to, because like our little sticky claws are in such things, it can take a while to be released from those. And so whatever we have received in this time of quiet, it's like our mantra or our wisdom that we bring back, like we bring into consciousness, so that we have this concrete, literal way that we can respond. Like, it might be, sometimes when I lead people through meditation, I hear them say, oh, well, or they're meditating and they, have this practice that's ongoing, and they say, well, right, nothing happened. And if you kind of dive a little further, you might say, were you able at all in this time of stillness to get to a point of stillness, like to feel a little bit more centered and quiet and slowed down in your body? And if that is all you noticed, that is huge, because that is your wisdom. That as soon as that energy of craving, of clinging comes, take a quick, deep breath. You ground yourself back into the earth. You open up the heart and you allow that center point to come again. So it wasn't nothing. That wasn't nothing that was received in the stillness. That was the actual medicine, you might say, of what you need for when you're in the middle of those situations of clinging. Sometimes people actually have a word or phrase that comes forth, or they might actually like see a color. And so if you're struggling with something you're craving a lot, or something you're clinging to, an outcome you're clinging to, and maybe in the quiet you just saw like a little yellow bit, a little bit of yellow light, then find something yellow and put it before you. Keep it with you. Like, wear it some way that you bring yellow into your days, so that that wisdom, that medicine that was received in the time of stillness, like, helps you to move forward through clinging or craving. This is the way these times of stillness can actually be exactly what we need to release us for our path. I want to say one more word, because I know as I share a lot about Mary the Magdalene, I have a deep passion for her. And clearly, if you follow this show, I talk about her a lot. But this is like her season. Like, Easter is where she is focal, right there, right alongside the risen Christ. And so in my own like studies and all the books I've read, and I've done academic studies, I do the, reading and listening to books about folks who are channeling Mary Magdalene. There are people who actually get into the quiet, and then all of these images or words come from Mary Magdalene. So I've exposed myself to those readings as well. Love historical fiction. I love like the way that so many beautiful writers can bring like the story of Jesus to life. And I understand it's not necessarily exactly how it happened, but there is a way when we enter into this path of the heart that we become aware of more than one way to know. Like, there's not only the way of knowing through empirical evidence, there's also the way of knowing through what comes to us as we are in this place of openness, how God speaks and reveals to us as we are in this place of centeredness. And so there are so many people, those who are into like esoteric healing, those who are into long following understandings of Mary Magdalene. I'm telling you, it's all out there. And I sample a little bit of all of it and find that there can be so much wisdom in all of it. And it can be a little scary. And so you might think like, this is a little bit crazy, or this sounds a little weird. And here we have this Presbyterian pastor, like always focusing on Mary the Magdalene. And I had an experience with a group of Presbyterian pastor colleagues leading us through this time of devotion. And I would say it was like, kind of right out of the epistles of Paul. And the pastor was sharing these words that I have shared so many times, but in the quiet, there was like a voice from God, I would say, like this inward kind of voice that I heard, like, nothing can separate you from me. It was like God saying, like, nothing can separate you from me, Jule. Like, it's okay. Like, at the end of the day, it's all right. Like, it's all okay because nothing can separate you from me. So I remember that experience. There's been some like key points like that along my journey where it's like opened up a whole another path of my spirituality because of those kinds of experiences. And to take great comfort in the fact that we're dealing with a living God. That's what we learned during the season of Easter. This is a God that continues to be at work in all of our lives, and a God who promises, I will be with you always. Like, I'm with you through it all. Whether you're losing your mind in readings that sound like way, way out there, or whether you're like right there in the scriptures and studying and learning exactly what is right there, whether you are in a place of tremendous doubt or you're in a place of great certitude, wherever we are on the journey, the promise from God, what I truly believe, is that nothing will separate us from God. I think about it as that like love that will not let us go. This is the beauty and the joy of Easter. Friends, go forth into this Eastertide. Keep on celebrating. New life is all around us. Watch for the ways God will work new life in you as well. Blessings, and I'll see you next time.